All right, it's our very last time with Loren Montgomery for this season, 2025, and it ends again with a state championship for his Bixby Spartans, 31-17 over a very tough Owasso Rams team. That's now 11 out of 12. I believe that's 8 in a row, 11 out of 12. And gosh, about what, the 150th title for you guys? But I mean, this was a heck of a football game, Coach. Take me through the beginning of this when it was really tight.
Well, I was proud of the way our guys came out. We came out and got the ball and executed extremely well on our first drive. Moved the football well. Then defense got a stop, and then we're moving the football well again, and then we turned the ball over. And so it seems like that was kind of a turning point in the game where things began to get a little tighter. Both teams kind of settled down just a little bit, but I thought our I thought guys did a good job of continuing to battle despite two first half turnovers. And, when you're playing a good team like Owasso, when you lose that turnover battle, it makes it extremely difficult. And so we were able to get one takeaway from them. But yeah, that's something that made life a little more difficult on ourselves. But hats off to really both teams. When you look at a state championship game at the 6A level. Two really talented teams, two really well coached teams, guys playing extremely hard. It looked like week 14 of the season because both teams were game planned up, comfortable with the schemes, and just a lot of veterans out there getting it on.
Yeah, it's from what I read, and I wasn't able to see it for some personal reasons, but from what I read, it was also one of the harder hitting games of the year, too. Is that true?
Yeah, it was. There was, there was a lot of physicality to the game, and that's what happens when you got a lot of good football players out there.
Yep. You talk about being schemed up. Nobody goes through and changes all kinds of things, but everybody makes little adjustments. Are there anything that you guys had to adjust to from Owasso in that first half when things were really tight there?
Some of the things that we had seen from them throughout the season and their personality changed just a little bit. They had us schemed up because obviously we've got a lot of tendencies, in our game, and so they had some good schemes. I would say defensively they base out of an odd front, but the last few weeks they had showed more of an even front and gave us a steady dose of that to our heavier personnel, and I thought that was good for them. They did a good job of, taking away some of our perimeter screen game, which hats off to them. And so I think Coach Neal, the defense coordinator, did a really nice job of saying, "Hey, what does Bixby do well?" and working hard to take that away from us.
Well, unfortunately for everybody else in 6A1, what Bixby does well is pretty much everything. So that can sometimes be really hard. And speaking of that, you had some guys who did. Cord Nolan played really well. Carson played well again. But you got a guy going for 169 yards who used to play for the other team, and that had to be quite a night for him.
Yeah, Jason, he rushed for over 150 yards, and then I think, caught a couple of shovel passes that were really big plays that go down as receiving yards. But his ability to make the first guy miss, to run through guys and turn what's in a big game, minimal gains, 2, 3, 4 yards into 5, 6, 7 yard gains, was tremendous. And when you can do that, one thing that's probably lost on a lot of the fans is you can stay ahead of the chains and you can be efficient, and you're not getting into those long yardage situations where the defense coordinator can dial up his best third and long blitz, and you're maybe working really hard to create something offensively. And so when uh, you're ahead of the chains, it makes it easier as a play caller for Coach Snyder to sequence his stuff.
All right, so we'll get to the half or the second half here in a moment. I want to remind you we're sponsored by Red River Payroll. We'll get to them in a moment. Before I do that, I want you to take me to the halftime locker room. Your guys have played in tough games. That Mustang game was tough, and we talked during the year about getting them some extra time. Now, here's where everybody's got to go to the full extent. So, what's some of the things you guys are talking about at halftime? Some adjustments you're making, and kind of what you're saying to the team as you head out there for the final 28 minutes or 24 minutes.
So, yeah, we're down or we're up. It felt like we were down, but we were up 14-6 at halftime. And I think the big deal for our guys, offensively, we needed to protect the football. And then, one thing that we like to do is come in and script a couple of series for the second half. Maybe stuff that we liked in the first half, maybe stuff that we saw where we were getting a certain look and we could come back to it. And then, defensively, just as you always do, they had a few wrinkles for us. And the way we play guys on both sides, a lot of times, those minor adjustments and things like that are hard to communicate on the sidelines. But no, you make some of those, minor adjustments. I think halftime adjustments are probably overrated in a lot of situations. But you make some of those and just kind of let your guys know that hey, it's 4-quarter ball game. We're going to have to continue to swing. We're going to have to continue to make plays.
I got to think though that there's something in the nature of any player. Any player wants to play an important game late in the season, and when it's the last one, it's the most important. But I got to think there's a whole lot of something in the nature of the coaching staff and the players that there wasn't a whole lot of motivation needed. I'm sure they were ready to go back out there.
Of course, it's a state championship game. During the week of practice, I know Coach Snyder looked at me and he's like, "Hey, no pressure, but 364 days. We've been working for 364 days for this opportunity." And which is really the truth. Yesterday we're back in the weight room lifting weights and working, and bus ride home you're working on moving the next season. But I had an opportunity yesterday to go up next to Trey McLaughlin, our senior outside linebacker who recently signed with West Virginia. And he's like, "Coach," he's like, "I just love playing in those big, stressful, close ball games." He's like, It's just so much better." And, I've had a tendency to agree with him when they're over. When they're over, that's fun. It's like leading up to it and during the stress level is pretty intense.
I would almost like to know what you said back when he said, "Hey, no pressure, but 364 days." But let's just leave that on the table, shall we? Instead, let's talk about Red River Payroll and say thanks to Mr. Steve Hobbs. We had a change 1 month into the season with a sponsor who had it's a long story, but anyway, we did. And Steve Hobbs, who's been big and his family has at Bixby for a long time, as Coach Montgomery told us, immediately jumped in to help sponsor this for Red River Payroll. So thanks to the folks at Red River Payroll. More importantly, if this is toward the end of the year, you're realizing the people doing your payroll just aren't doing it that well. You're not sure that maybe you're getting served the way you should. And especially if you're with a big company, you don't know anybody there, you're just a customer. Well, how about Red River Payroll, who has everything the big companies have, all the big software, all the exact same things everybody else uses. However, you know everybody. You want to know Steve? You're going to know Steve. Right. And it's Steve's company. Ask him how it got the name Red River. It's kind of funny. You want somebody to actually take over for that and do that so you don't have to mess with it anymore. And as a guy who has a small business, I do in my Okie scuba diving instruction business, I know that kind of thing can be such a giant hassle. And if somebody else does it well, and I can have it off my plate for a right price and somebody I can call and talk to when I need to, that's going to work for me. So he's kind of their head coach. So if you'd like to be a part of that, then just look him up at redriverpayroll.com. And thanks again to the folks at Red River Payroll and Mr. Hobbs for being a part of this. All right, so back out in the second half, we're still tied late in the third quarter. Kind of tell me from there forward, because you guys did get a couple of scores to kind of pull away. What were the keys there, Coach?
Well, we were able to put together a couple of drives, continue to get stops defensively, and we got down into field goal range, kicked a field goal, to put us up. At one point, trying to go through my head the sequence of it, but we worked into a 10-point lead, and then Owasso did what they do. They make plays. They were converting on third downs. They're talented players are making plays, and they got down really into the red zone and had an opportunity as we had a 10-point lead, and our defense held them to a field goal there, which I thought was huge. And then as we got the ball back with fairly limited amount of time, we knew that we had to make some first downs. Is about 3.5 minutes, and we were able to convert and make some first downs. Wassa only had a couple of timeouts at that point, and so finally got a look that we really liked, and were able to crease him just a little bit, and Jason was able to put it into the end zone.
And that was really 31-17, by the way, was the final. So again, another state championship. I know the former play-by-play guy at Alabama, who's a really good dude, Eli Gold. And we were talking about Coach Saban one time, and he said the one thing Coach Saban will bite your head off for is never ask him to compare teams. So I'm not going to ask you to compare teams. However, this was a very senior laden team. Last year you and I talked about your team being very young. These guys had been around; they'd seen it. The bullets had flown. They were seasoned. So I don't want you to compare them, but as an overall group, when you look back at this team, what will your thoughts be? You think?
Well, very talented, a ton of experienced players, as you mentioned. A lot of returning starters off last year's team that experienced success there at the end. And as we met as a leadership council in the off season, our seniors elected our fifth core value or our rallying cry for this group to be resilience, and their callback for that is fight failure. Well, fighting failure for this bunch, I think, is something a little bit unique that a lot of people might not think about. But fighting failure for this bunch is drowning out the outside noise from the day the state championship was over in 2014. Everybody was telling them how good they were going to be. Hey, you got so many Division I players on this team. Nobody's going to be able to hang with you. We had big wins earlier in the year, and human nature is to listen to that and maybe throttle it down. And guys like Cord Nolan, Braden Presley, what we would call our wolves, our guys that have the ability to change the ecosystem, said, "Hey, no, we're not. That stuff is poison and will cause us to fail. And so we're going to fight failure by drowning out that outside noise." And I commend those guys, for making sure this team did that and made sure this team was focused and did the things that we needed to do to be successful.
I don't think people understand how hard that is. And I think you saw a great example of it in the ACC championship game. A Virginia team that had just beaten Duke by 30 lost to Duke which is not a great football team, but I think they rolled in there completely overconfident, and you could kind of see it. And when that starts that way, it's so hard to get yourself back, and your guys just never do that. All right, you mentioned the offseason, which has already started. So take us through a little bit of what your schedule will be like as we move on from here towards spring ball and all that.
Yeah, so if anyone knows anything about our program, they know that we lift weights and we lift weights year round. From the time you're a seventh grader in Bixby Public Schools, we have you in a class and you're lifting weights. And so we started that off yesterday. Did some senior exit surveys to get those guys' feedback on how we make our program better. Got those guys designing some rings and that sort of thing. For us, it's checking in equipment, it's banquet tonight, it's nominations for all state awards, postseason awards, all those sort of things. And our goal would be to have kind of our rejuvenation phase, so to speak, in the weight room buttoned up with our guys. Their goals for next year, exit interviews done with all of our players. Next week when we leave for Christmas break, and then when we come back for Christmas break, we continue our weight room training, and then 6 hour, football, speed training, agility training, what we call 5 minute football lessons each day, where we're teaching real basic football concepts, trying to increase our football guys' IQ, their football IQ. And then as you move on into spring break, the coaching staff is meeting. We're deciding kind of what wrinkles we're going to put in. We're attending clinics, meeting weekly, tracking our players that are in multiple sports. We have a ton of multi-sport athletes, which we encourage. And then really all that kind of leads up to spring drills, which is helmets only during the school period. We do that a couple of weeks, and then spring ball, team camp, summer, and then just kind of rocking and rolling as far as that goes. So hopefully all of our guys and coaches, everybody will have an opportunity once we get this season in the books and buttoned up and all the busy work done to take a couple weeks over spring break to lift at their leisure, kind of what they want to do and those sort of things, and then be refreshed and ready to come back when we come back in January.
You're going to get the questions, and you are. Hey, how are you guys going to be next year? Hey, how are you guys going to be next year with all the guys that are going to D1 schools? You talked about Cord, West Virginia, and of course, going to OSU for Presley. I mean, you got a lot of guys who are going to go play. I mean, you got a dude playing at Tulsa. He's going to be on the offensive line over there with some of the guys who are already there from your program, obviously. So, what do you think about the group? You're losing a lot of guys, but you've always got other people. What do you think you're going to have coming back? How confident are you?
Yeah, so we lose a ton of talented guys. I think everybody knows that. It was like heading into the 2024 season. We had a small senior class, had lost arguably one of the best state championship teams we'd ever had in the 2023 class. 44 seniors in that particular group. And so you got to roll up your sleeves and you got to go to work. We've been fortunate the last few years to let's see, in 2024, both of our JV teams, we played two JV schedules on Monday night. We're undefeated. And then this year, one of the teams was undefeated, and our second team had one loss. And our middle school teams have been good. And so we feel like we have some good players that are coming up. As you know, and as to be expected, we'll have some guys that are inexperienced with varsity reps, but that goes with the territory, and that's where our job comes in. And so I think we'll have a good nucleus of guys. You talk about guys coming back. You talk about Caden Penny. You talk about Nate Hobbs, Connor Arendt, Gavin Wilson. We got a lot of guys that have played a lot of meaningful reps and snaps, but we also have a lot of spots that are going to be open. And so just go to work and do what we do, and you've got to trust the process. And I think it's always boils down to the team that can keep showing up and keep doing the right things time after time. Even when there is, outside noise, it's kind of it'll be the opposite this year.
Yes, right.
This year everybody was telling everybody how good they were and how nobody can beat them. And then, this will be another one of those years where everybody's, ooh, what are you going to do? So we go to work, commit to our process, and see what happens.
Yeah, I see that little smile when you say, "Oh, what are you going to do?" Because you know what you're going to do. I mean, that's why you coach. You like the challenge of doing this. Certainly, you love having the seniors, but it's the development of players and development of people that I think makes it great. All right, so tell me, what are you going to do to relax a little bit during the quote unquote off season?
Well, so I'll take this 2 weeks and, only have a few things on the calendar, or I'll take the 2 weeks over Christmas break once we get everything buttoned up. Don't have a ton of things on the calendar. I'm going to watch bowl games. If we have nice weather, I'm going to play golf. I'm going to work out. I'm going to spend time with our family. And I think we're going to be around town. And, that's kind of a fun thing, a low key Christmas break. And so, get my battery recharged, which it doesn't take very long. It only takes a day or two, and be ready to come back and take on 2026.
I was going to say, you're the only head coach I've ever heard say he's not going fishing.
No, I'm not much of a fisherman. You can't have too many hobbies when you're a coach. There's just not
Yeah,
enough time, or a parent really for that regard. And so hopefully we can get out on the golf course and get some days above 50.
right. So birdies, not fishies. All right. And by the way, speaking of family, congratulations on your son passing his driving test.
Hey, thank you. I can't believe, 16 years. In 2009, when I was interim head coach over at Jinx for half a season or whatever, 3 days after the state championship game, Guy was born, and then now all of a sudden, a couple days after the state championship, I'm taking him to get his driver's license. So pretty crazy.
It is that. Well, Coach, you're so gracious with your time, which you don't have to be. So I want to thank you once again for doing this. I just love high school football. I want to continue to support it. I want to thank the folks at Red River Payroll again, and congratulations on continuing to feed the monster.
Well, appreciate it, and thanks for everything you do for high school football. High school football in Oklahoma, particularly in Tulsa, is a huge deal for the community of Tulsa, and it's because guys